Hello everyone. Today I'd like to share with you a game I played in the local league. I was white, my opponent's rating was 1860, my rating is around 1730, 40ish. I thought it was an interesting game. Let's go through it and see what happened. So as you know, I play e4 and my opponent decided to play the Caro-Kann, and against the Caro-Kann and the French I played the two knights variation. So that's one of the options. And the best response to this is bishop to e2. Now, the opponent played e6 here, and this becomes very similar to a French defense. In French defense, you start with e6 and d5, but the problem with the French defense is that the light squared bishop gets stuck behind the pawns, and it'll be difficult and a challenge for black to develop that bishop. And I've seen people who have spoken about this, and they said they changed or switched to Caro-Kann because of that problem. So it looks like my opponent has a similar idea. So with the French defense, the knight will develop to d7 and protect the c5, and so on and so forth. So I castled here, just did some development moves, and now the opponent moves the knight to f6, and in French defense, I normally play e5 here to push the knight away. So I went with e5, and the knight goes to d7. Here I played d4 against the French, so I played it here as well. And my opponent decided to play c5. And you can see that the problem with this is that the bishop can move to g5, attacking the queen, and the queen has to go either to c7, b6, or a5. If it goes to b6, it can attack the b2 pawn. There's a lot of pressure on the d4 pawn, and I have lost a lot of games or the pawn on d4 in a lot of games in the past. However, some people play bishop to e7, and that's what I want in here. If they play bishop to e7, which is allows your knight now to go to the b5 square, attacking the d6 and c7. This will happen in the game, and you'll see what happens. So I go here, and he decided to go to e7. As you can see, my knight can go to these two squares. So if I exchange the bishop now, either the king has to take it or the queen, and he can't prevent the knight jump to b5, where it can attack the d6 square, checking the king, or going to c7, picking the rook in the corner. So I very quickly played these moves, and as you can see, there's no way out of the two threats that I have. So the best option for black is to give the exchange and carry on with the game. So when I check that with the engine, I'll show you the variation that I checked. So if black castles here, I go to knight to c7, knight to c6, and I take the rook in the corner, and this exchange will occur on f3. Rook takes the knight, and you can see that the pawn on d4 becomes weak. So now the queen is attacking two pawns, and I can't prevent losing one of the two. And the engine evaluates this as equal. So this was the better option for black to go to. However, black decided to move the knight to f8, and this is a blunder. So the first thing I do is I give the check on d6. This will prevent black from castling, and he decided to go to d8. And you can see that my plan here would be to open up these files now to get my rooks into d1 and c1 and start attacking the king, and I'll have a good game. That was my idea. So I took the pawn on c5, so that's a free pawn. However, the engine later on was suggesting a stronger move, and the stronger move was knight to g5. So this will attack the bishop and also attack the f7. So in here, the opponent will take the bishop, but I have got the opportunity to take the f7 pawn first, and then I take the bishop. So the game will continue, but you would see that the two knights in the enemy territory is very annoying, especially with the help of the pawn on e5. So these are the scenarios that could have been played. So you can see that these knights are becoming really annoying, and the engine evaluates this as +6. So there's a big advantage. However, my approach was much simpler, and I was following the strategy and my plan of opening the files and attacking the king. So the opponent took the knight, I took back the bishop. Now, the opponent developed the knight to c6, and here, as per my plan, I started opening the files. So here, the opponent can't take the pawn because of the discovery attack on the knight and taking the rook. So he can't take the pawn, he can't push forward because I would then take the knight first and then. So black decided to take the pawn on e5. So this reduces the defense on my knight and obviously picks the pawn and potentially attacks the bishop, trying to reduce the attack on the black king. So I took the pawn on d5 as per my plan. Again, I'm following the plan, trying to open the files for my rooks to get engaged in the attack. And the next idea is to take the pawn on e6, and this will open everything. So the opponent decided to move the king to c7. Now, I found an interesting idea, and that was to take the pawn on b7. Now, the king can't take it, because if the king takes this, obviously you've got the d6, you'll pick the queen. So you can't take that. You can either take the bishop or move the queen out of the way, which I will still have the pawn push. So I thought the opponent might pick this, but I think you will see that the queen will replace the bishop and you will have the same problems. So here the opponent decided to move the queen to g5. And from here on, the game became very easy. I pushed my pawn first, and the opponent moved the king to c8. Actually, before I move to that, I would also say that the engine was also suggesting that, because I was thinking about taking this pawn in the meantime, and I was thinking what will happen during the game. The knight will come here, but then we will move with the queen in and obviously opening the diagonal for the bishop, causing a lot of problems. So I'll show you a scenario here, what will happen. So you can see that the king is in the open, and this king will not survive very long with the two rooks coming into the game. And you can see the black's rooks are out of the game at the moment, and they're staying in the back rank, and it's not very ideal. However, my idea was much simpler, and the king moved to c8, so I pushed the pawn again, Black decides to take that pawn, and here you can see that I can check here and threatening the rook. He decided to go to c7, and now I move knight to b5, and that means that the king cannot move to any of these squares, has to go back. If it tries to go back to b8, it will get checkmated very soon with my queen to d6 check, and then it will be forced to move to c8 and checkmate here. So he resigned at this point. And I was thinking it was really good game I played, and it was obviously due to my opponent's blunder of knight to f8. But when I checked this with the engine, it gave it a very high accuracy percentage and a rating of 2450-ish, which I was really pleased with. So I thought I'll share this with you and see what your thoughts are on this game.